morning and welcome to ManchTalk. My name's Tammy Simmons. I'm your host, and I feel like I'm out of the loop because I was gone for a week. I'm glad you're tuning in. Joining me is my co-host, Carla Gericke.
Promotion.
Special spot in the world now. And Matt Simon, who's from the Marijuana Policy Project, who's worked here in New Hampshire and in other states, but here in New Hampshire, on legalization and the medical marijuana bills and so on for quite a few years now. So thank you for coming on with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for
Thank you,
having me.
Carla, for thinking of it. Let's talk with Matt for a bit first, and then we can venture off into random land. So I know there's, tell me what the laws in New Hampshire, because maybe people watching don't know. What is legal and what isn't legal in New Hampshire right now as far as marijuana goes?
Sure. So we have a limited therapeutic cannabis program. About 7,000 patients have registered through the state. They've been recommended cannabis from their doctors for some qualifying medical condition or symptom. They have an ID card that protects them from arrest and allows them to visit one of the 4 alternative treatment centers or dispensaries that provide cannabis in our state. In 2017, the House and Senate passed a bill, and Governor Sununu signed it, that decriminalized simple possession. Yeah. So 3/4 of an ounce or less for anybody, patient or non-patient, is now a violation. It's a $100 fine rather than having been a misdemeanor criminal offense. Now the legislature is talking about legalization, regulation, and possibly taxation of cannabis. House Bill 481 passed the House, was reviewed by a second committee, passed the House again, and is now waiting for a public hearing on the Senate side.
And where, as of now, as of the last House committee, you said it's legalization, regulation, and possibly taxation. So the taxation part has been added or hasn't been added?
Well, it's all possibly, because you may have heard that our governor is not in
theoretically,
support of
I
this
agree.
bill.
I'm just saying, if it were to, what is the current status of?
The bill, as approved by the House, would legalize up to an ounce for adults 21 and older. Adults 21 and older would be allowed to grow 3 mature plants.
On their own property?
On their own property. It'd have to be out of sight in a secure, enclosed, locked facility.
Not in your front yard.
Not in your front yard.
Just saying,
and if you have kids, you'd have to keep it away from your kids. There would be a regulated system. A cannabis control commission would license growers, independent testing labs, retail stores, product manufacturing facilities. Those would all come into existence, and it would be taxed at a rate of 5% at the cultivation level and then another 9% at the retail level.
Now, so that would be a cumulative 14%, or actually maybe more of that, because it doesn't actually work that way. It's not an ad thing. But
Correct.
Right now, do you know off the top of your head, and if you don't, that's fine. This isn't a quiz. What do we tax cigarettes at? I think it's more than that. I think it's significantly more than that, but I could be wrong. And what do we
don't remember.
And I mean, I'm sure we tax alcohol more than that.
So we don't actually tax alcohol. We have a liquor commission that sells it for profit, and all the money goes to the state. Really, a lot of the debate's been over what are neighboring states doing, what would be the tax rate that would allow us to succeed in eliminating the illicit market. Obviously, if you overtax it and it's $500 an ounce at the store and $300 an ounce
still in the black market,
your buddy down the street, you're not achieving the goal. So I've been really happy in this state that lawmakers, really both parties, have been focused more on wanting to eliminate the illicit market than on trying to squeeze revenue out of cannabis.
That's where I struggle with trying to reason with people is, keep in mind, Matt can probably tell you, if you roll the clock back 10 years ago, I probably was an opponent of this type of legislation, and now I would be a proponent of this. Mostly because of the black market, mostly because of the crime that is attached to it. And I try to say to people all the time, think about prohibition. There were bootleggers, and there was, alcohol was crazy. There was, moonshine and stuff that could blind you and stuff. And I have never, in today's world, seen anybody peddling vodka on the corner, ever. It just doesn't seem to happen anymore, because you don't need to buy it from the sketchy guy on the corner anymore. And then there's people who, I don't know why, think that suddenly if we legalize it, that just means everybody's going to start smoking pot. And I'm like, that's a bizarre thing to me. This has literally no impact whatsoever on my personal life or Dan's personal life whatsoever.
And that really is one I hear all the time, and where I'm just like, really? So, and
I actually think people would be surprised. I mean, I'm not venturing down, but I know people who partake in marijuana. I think people would be surprised, the people that they are. They're not the people that they think. It's usually like this group that everybody goes, aha, those are all the pot smokers. And you're like, no, it's actually those attorneys over there.
Yeah, and
or those bankers,
honestly,
those professional people. I think there's just this stigma that people can't let go of.
Right. Well, people who have something to lose, people who have kids, people who have jobs are very much still in the closet when it comes to cannabis use. But as you suggest, it doesn't mean they're not consuming.
And that's the other one that I hear. Not only do they think everybody's going to suddenly start smoking pot, but somehow if we legalize it for 21 and older, somehow this means we're encouraging kids to smoke pot. Right. And I'm like,
right.
That if we're going to use that mindset, then we should definitely close all fast food places.
Did you guys see that in Nashua they want to raise the smoking age in the city from 18 to 21?
Smoking age or smoking to buy cigarettes?
No, I
think it might have been the smoking age. How can you do that?
Well, and maybe those two things go hand in hand. But there's also this push that I've been reading about where people want to lower the voting age to 16
because we need their votes.
So I'm very curious as to how can we on the one hand argue something that is so important, your vote, your participation in the democratic process,
but they're not capable of making decisions.
But you cannot actually make any decisions with regard to the autonomy of your own physical self.
Well, and that's what when people bring up the voting age or the drinking age or anything. And I
think we should just tie those things
together.
It should all be the
same.
Whatever that age
adult age is, it is.
It's flat.
That's right.
For everything.
If you are old enough to serve in the military and go to war
and die
for your country, whatever that age is, then you should also be able to vote, and you should also be able to buy a beer, and smoke a cigarette, and get married, and buy a house, and all the things that But you can't.
Yeah.
And then you get the kids, and there's always seems to be this group of kids from Dover who
are
always promoting.
What is it with Dover? What is in the water?
I don't know. There's got to be
It's not the water.
No, but it's like you say.
Organized opponents.
Why are 15-year-olds feeling the
reform.
need to push legislation that says keep me from smoking? Or here's an idea. Don't smoke.
But here's the other thing is because of the way that propaganda has worked, right? So basically for at least 100 years with marijuana policy in any event, no one's been telling the truth, right? So we're in this situation where, I was shocked. I actually contacted Matt and I was like, have you heard of this group? Because I saw something on my Facebook feed, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was sort of like, Are You Ready, New Hampshire? And it was like for marijuana, and I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Are we ready to lose a generation?
And
we're all going to smoke pot immediately.
And their lives are all going to go directly into the toilet.
Right? They're going to all
be a disaster,
they're all going to be psychotic.
Well, and they're going to instantly become heroin addicts, because somehow I'm going to say that.
Right.
That correlation between I don't get it. I will not. You could show me all the statistics in the world. I cannot believe that marijuana leads to heroin use.
No, and I'm pretty sure if we're going to even, I think the gateway drug theory has pretty much been dispelled in general. We can
even the DEA admits that there's little to no evidence.
But if you want to say that there's a gateway drug, it's alcohol.
Well,
alcohol,
certainly.
More so. It's far more addictive.
I certainly started drinking.
It's more readily available. People abuse it.
Now, of course, people will make the argument, okay, so let's not make things worse, right? So there are people that I have talked to who are like, yeah, we should totally ban alcohol too. Let's go back to alcohol
and I'm telling you, and fast food.
And I'll say, I have experienced bootlegged alcohol, and that's because I went to college in Mississippi, and I taught at a community college in rural eastern Kentucky, both of which are areas that have dry counties. I lived in a dry county in Mississippi. We were a wet city inside the dry county.
Oh, wow.
But in Kentucky, the neighboring two counties were dry. And moonshine was a thing.
And
there's because other alcohol wasn't available.
People still make
regulated alcohol.
And people still pay taxes to law enforcement that still chase after them, and there's still actually a market for illegal alcohol in a few counties still in the United States. Most of us have gotten beyond that. So flash forward, what has actually happened? When Colorado and Washington legalized in 2012, and rolled out retail sales in 2014. The number one concern that I heard, just as when we did medical cannabis here and decrim here, the number one concern we heard, what about the kids? What about the children? If we let cancer patients and MS patients in New Hampshire have cannabis, teen use is going to skyrocket.
And it hasn't, I bet.
If we legalize and regulate in Colorado, teen use is going to skyrocket. No, absolutely not. So all the states that have legalized, there's before and after data, there's state surveys, federal surveys. Teen use is flat or down in the states that have legalized for adult use. And that's despite, in Colorado, $6 billion worth of sales happening through the retail system since 2014. So we've sold adults $6 billion worth of cannabis. Teen use has gone down a couple of points. And that's, I think, partly because kids already had access.
Right.
I mean,
Kids have
their access wasn't expanded.
I'm going to guess it's easier for a kid to buy pot than it is to buy beer.
Probably.
At least
Because they
easy.
buy it from somebody on the street. They can't go into 7-Eleven because
And
they're
wouldn't
going
you
to have
rather
to have an
have, you know, I mean, once again, this is for like, 21-year-olds and
Right.
older.
have something that's a little bit more
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah, or at least, the problem with the moonshine and the
don't know
bathtub gin was, it was making people blind
Right.
because your products aren't
Making them
safe.
die.
Right.
So wouldn't it be nice to actually
Not to
have
mention
products,
the whole crime problem.
right,
Right.
to know what the strength is of stuff, to treat it
Right.
like a medicine.
Correct. The stores in Colorado, you have to be 21 to get in the door. They come with an informational handout. These are the concerns. These are the issues.
I have gone to every
And they
state where
use
it's
the
been
tax money.
legalized.
Have you noticed anything?
recreationally, and actually not all of them, but back when California, Colorado, all of them. And when I was in California last year, I went into a store, and I had flown with my driver's license. So the TSA did not pick up that my driver's license had expired. The pot store stopped me and said, "I am sorry, you cannot come in here."
Because you had an expired driver's license.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, so
I bet you felt safer on that airplane.
yeah, for sure, right?
I just had the joy of flying twice, and yeah.
How was your gate raped, Tammy?
Well, this is the first time we opted to just go through the stupid scanners, which I'm still bothered by because on the way back, I still had to get frisked. Because I'm like, yeah, I don't have it. And I'm thinking, what's the point? Well, you might have moved. So how is that detecting metal? If you move, you suddenly have metal in you? I was like, yeah. And I always just find the need to say, yeah, I feel so much safer. When we left Manchester, it was like our flight was before 6 a.m. So we're talking like not busy. I could count probably 30 TSA agents in the little itty bitty Manchester airport. And I thought, it's a lot of money here. And I couldn't figure out what they all could possibly be doing. We could have each been assigned a personal TSA agent.
yeah.
And I don't get it. And you can buy the pre-check. I don't understand that. So, like, if
So you
somebody
could
was actually
circumvent
going
it,
to blow
right.
up a plane, wouldn't they just
Bribe
somehow
the
get the
pre-check?
pre-check? And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, it makes no sense. But of course, it is, part of the part and parcel of security theater.
Right, making people
coming
feel
to the
like they're
streets of New Hampshire as
Yeah.
well. I had my protest last week.
I missed it. I was in Florida. Sorry, I was
I
sunbathing.
understand. Actually, considering it started snowing.
Sorry.
Thank you, April in New Hampshire. We had a good turnout. There were between 30 and 40 people. The aldermen were actually doing a budget meeting, so in the end we decided not to go in. Also, I think at the start of the meeting they didn't even have a quorum, so like half the aldermen hadn't shown up. The newspaper came out, and new people showed up, people I don't know, and who all kind of have stories. So I'm hoping this is an issue we can sort of keep in the forefront of people's minds, and I'm working on an essay or a article. I'm hoping the union leader will run it, where we just talk about this idea of liberty and security. Because part of the problem, and I see this all over Facebook, is just people are like, well, I'm willing to give up liberty for security. And I'm like,
that.
okay,
You
that's
can
cool,
do that.
but
What about
I
me?
don't want
Right.
to.
I don't
so
want to. Well, and I've seen recently, and I thought it was random, like disconnected comments where people are like, how do I get the police scanner information because there's something going on and I can't find it. There's all these police cars on my street, and I think, I don't really know that it's healthy to not know why there's 6 police cars on your street.
No, and oftentimes when you ask them, I do think maybe in the past 2 years, just because some of us do enforce our rights and stand up for our rights. they won't answer your question.
No.
I mean, I walk my dog all over the neighborhood
Yep.
all the time. I live on the west side. I do see a lot of like policing
Yep.
going on, and I'll always stop and ask because I'm like,
What's going on?
one, I'm curious. Two, I think it like builds a healthy
Yeah.
environment where everyone in your neighborhood is equally
Feels-
concerned
and-
about like what's going on. Why do we like what is the crime and like what's happening?
Right. Is there crime in my neighborhood?
Right.
Is there something I should be concerned about? Do I have to? How
Like I said, am I in danger?
Right,
Should I get out of here before
there's-
someone shoots
well,
my dog?
Maybe there's been a rash of robberies.
Right.
How would you know that?
Right.
You wouldn't anymore.
So I was cleaning my basement the other day and I found old newspaper articles and they said the encryption, it was from a 2016 Union Leader, it was front page, and it was like, encryption scanners encrypted thwarts criminals, and I'm like, really? Or
Show me
does
the-
it
show me
just
the data.
really help you to and exactly so hopefully people I'm going to follow up. I'm going to try and make some action out of this. I think that we should be having
Yep.
that debate, much like when the scanners were encrypted. There
Yep.
was no public discussion.
Nope.
That just happened. That is something actually that's happening nationally.
They're just doing it.
And they're just doing it. And so I think there's a lot of this sort of fait accompli, like, oh, we're just doing this stuff that's going on. And I think an important thing we need to think about is in New Hampshire, bipartisanly, with 81% of the vote of everyone who voted in the 2018 election, which was probably the most,
That's a big
divisive thing, we passed a New Hampshire constitutional amendment that said we do not want government intrusion in our personal and private lives. Now, I understand you can say that the cameras, you're in
That
public.
Elm Street is in public.
That's fine, but the question is, if they can't tell us, is this subject to right to know?
Yeah.
Who
Who's
gets
gonna
to
get-
look at the footage? What are you using it for? Are you doing pre-crimes?
Right.
Are you doing post-crimes? Are you only hurting the homeless? Are you only coming after people like me who
Right.
like to protest the police?
Right.
So, how's it going to work?
concerning.
Yeah.
It's very concerning. If you really step back and think about it and stop, if you disconnect yourself from the emotional part that says, I need the police to protect me.
Right.
Because, I'd hate to burst your bubble, people. The police's job is not to protect you.
There are 6 Supreme Court decisions
That
that
say they are not
literally
obligated
say
to protect you.
Supreme Court decisions that say we are not obligated to protect and serve.
Okay, I'm going to divert. I'm going to go back to Matt for a second because I'm curious. So, the legalization bill passed the House.
Twice.
Yes, it's out of the House.
It's gone, yeah.
Veto-proof majority in the House?
Not veto-proof. So, yeah, it was about 59% the first vote, a little less than that on the second vote. So,
It's getting there. I was going to say it would be interesting if there was a veto-proof majority in the House. It would be interesting because I said early on when the bills first came out this year, and I'm obviously a very active Republican, and I'm very supportive of Chris Sununu, and him and I don't agree on every issue, and I still am very supportive of Chris Sununu, but I actually would have what's the word I'm looking? Guessed that the 2 bills that he would veto that would probably have a chance of being overridden were the legalization and the death penalty repeal.
yeah.
So
I think death penalty repeal
I
at
think
this
that'll-
stage is veto-proof
I think
in
so.
the House and the Senate.
And that's another one that's got a bizarre thing. If we repeal the death penalty, suddenly everybody's going to murder people.
Right.
That's the same people. And I'm like, what?
Because you know what criminals
know.
do?
They think about-
consequences. They think about what could possibly be the penalty if I hurt
Yeah.
this person right now.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's only
I
going to be...
hear this state's
it's only-
really
it's
soft.
soft,
They're only going
right.
to put me...
They're only
in
going to
jail
put
for life.
life.
Forever.
So I'm going to do it anyways. Yeah,
So,
that's not how it
yes.
works.
Maybe I can hang out with Martha Stewart or whatever.
Oh, I'm reading Martha Stewart's biography right now. I want to
that's
bring her
interesting.
out to the Granite State. She's an interesting lady.
I'm sure she is.
Someone once, not a fan, a detractor, once called me the Martha Stewart of the Liberty Movement.
And you're like,
and
I
I
don't know if
was
that's a good
really
thing or
offended
not.
10 years ago. Now I'm like, maybe I should
That's
own
okay.
this.
Somebody, I think it was Neil Kirk, told me I was the new Steve Valancourt. Again,
I like that.
so he thought I would take it offensively, and I'm like, well, thank you. Steve was like the conscience of the House. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no.
So
Man gave some of the best floor speeches
was.
I've
I
ever
miss
heard in my
him.
life.
I really miss him. He was really, really good.
There were
if you
days
could-
when he drove me crazy.
Yeah, There's times, but I'll tell you,
There were
having
moments
been
when
there,
he was
when
amazing.
having had the pleasure of serving with him, what was interesting was there's the old adage that certain people go to the well and half the room clears. That's just the way it is. I used to actually feel good that half the room didn't clear when I got up to the well. But people didn't walk out very few people walk out when Steve would speak, because he actually knew what the heck he was talking about, and he knew what he was standing on, and his principles were strong, and he knew the rules, and he knew the precedents, and he was going to tell you them. And he's very much missed here in Manchester. So let's think. We have 10 minutes, maybe 9 minutes now. So let's see. What else is going on in Manchester? I went away on vacation. So I went to the Florida Panhandle where they were hit by the hurricane. We went partially because it's someplace we enjoy, but we also went because I said, these communities there are struggling to get back on their feet. So let's go and spend some of our vacation money in the places that maybe could benefit from it, not just
nice.
Yeah, because I'm kind of a nice person sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. So we went to Panama City Beach, which is beautiful. They call it the Redneck Riviera. Some places are a little more redneck, some places are a little more Riviera. But it's really, really nice. And just one town up is Mexico Beach. I have never seen devastated. You lived in the South, so you may have seen more devastated. It was amazingly devastated. Like, there's pillars that the houses are on. Yeah, there's just pillars for, blocks.
Wow.
And you think, where did those houses go? Like, they're just gone. I don't know how communities like that can, how they recover. Like, what if they don't recover? We usually go on this one boat cruise out to an island. We called, and we're like, what time's your cruise leave? And they're like, oh, the island's okay, but we can't land because our docks are gone. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll take a different cruise with you then, because again...
But the thing is, amazingly, a lot of times these places, not all of them, but they do spring back.
I mean, there was definitely construction going on, but I mean, it's been 6 months since the hurricane, and there are just mounds and mounds and mounds of debris, and I can't imagine what that's going to be like when it starts getting really warm down there.
Oh, yeah, and it's going to start
And it's just,
rotting,
it's a vicious thing, and it's amazing how it goes from just moderately devastated to, boom, devastated.
But gee, you know what we should do? We should take other taxpayers' money and give it to these people so that they can rebuild in a place where we have
even better.
Hurricanes.
This one gets me. The girl that we talked to in this devastated town that we were buying lunch from, who said it was 1,000 times worse than what we saw, said FEMA is just getting to them.
Oh,
and I'm like, 6 months later, I'm pretty sure they needed you 6 months ago. I'm pretty sure now they've kind of figured out what their plan has to be. Right. So I was like, yeah.
Do you guys remember when the levees broke in New Orleans? And I mean, there was just this mass of private people who rented trucks, they put water on, and they were coming in. And then FEMA came in and chased those people away. And that, honestly, for me, that's sort of that's the part where I want to wake people up. I'm like, why is that happening?
Right.
Why can't we work together? And what gives the government the right to tell its people you're not allowed to help?
Well, and obviously
your
they're
neighbors.
not efficient if it's taken them 6 months to get to an area that's devastated by hurricanes.
I mean,
maybe they could take that funding and give it to local groups who could actually help those people. So anyways, I diverted. I went on vacation. While I was gone, Victoria Sullivan announced that she's running for mayor here in Manchester. She's taking on Joyce Craig. So far, that'll be a head-to-head woman-to-woman battle. Should be interesting. We'll see how that pans out. More and more people are stepping up to run for local offices, which is always nice to see. Interesting thing that I read while I was away, Katie DeRocher, who's a Democrat school board member, who serves on the teachers union contract committee.
MEA, yeah.
Well, the MEA put out this thing that nobody would negotiate with them, and there was all this thing, and Katie DeRocher, who's a Democrat, who's a very big supporter of the union, was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. That's simply not true. I don't know what they're talking about. Which doesn't shock me, but it was shock. If she was bothered enough to publicly say this is wrong to the unions that she supports, it's really, really bad. People blame the school board members and all this stuff. There's a lot of problems, and I hate to be anti-union all the time, but it always seems to come back. I read something, Tim Bain said that he sat down to talk to some about the Walk for Hunger, which the Manchester Republican Committee, by the way, will be participating in. You can go to manchestergop.com and maybe find information on it. And I think that's on May 12th or May 20th. So he was in a meeting about this Walk for Hunger, and apparently 9 or 10 different schools send teams of teachers and whatnot. Yeah, they might not participate because they don't have a union contract. And I'm like, what the heck does that have to do with it?
Right. Yeah, that
what does your union contract have to do with raising money to feed people?
Yeah.
That's ridiculously petty. But that's what it seems to be more. That unless...
Well, I think that in some ways, maybe what we're seeing is there is a level of frustration, and people have become like really incredibly petty and stupid and
Mean.
silly, and and it's like. That is a distraction. Let's talk about solutions
Yeah.
and issues. Let's not talk about name calling. I mean, I don't really do Twitter.
I don't Twitter
And
either.
and then I accidentally did, and then I was like, oh right, this is why
This is why I don't
because
Twitter.
suddenly you're just being name called and
Yep.
attacked and like all this stuff, and I was like, life's too short.
Yep.
I care about like getting things done. I would rather spend my Sunday morning doing a litter pickup
Yep.
in my neighborhood.
Yes, which I'm glad to see. We Heart West has been doing litter cleanups around West Manchester. I know one of the people there said if I want to organize one, they'd help promote it. I'm going to try to clean. It's all to help me, don't get me wrong. The street across from, the sidewalk across from me, we don't have houses. So it tends to get all, they get all grungy. And the city's never going to come through and clean it. So even if we tackle different corners, different years, they'll generally stay a little cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, we've done 2 now.
Yeah.
We did one on Rock Rimmon. That went really well. We had 21 people come out. Last week's we had maybe like 14 of us, and we did Dubuque Street from Kelly all the way past like my house.
Wow.
We kept going after.
Yeah.
It ends at noon. It's 10:30 to noon.
Yeah.
But there's that dip on Dubuque, and it's been filthy, and it's been
Been a
driving me
repository
nuts.
for a long
it's-
time.
It's
so we
always
went
that
out,
one weird stretch
right?
that nobody's taking care of.
I mean, I think it's also sometimes like something with the dip. I think it's just, maybe the
Stuff
tracks
blows
come out
down.
and it blows,
Yeah.
and it's post-winter.
It's got to be the property
and-
belongs to the people who live up
Somebody
on the
on
hill
top of the hill,
and
and they
never
don't really-
see it.
right.
Yeah.
So
And
hard to, they probably
There's a
don't think
couple
of
of
it as
those on
being
Mass
theirs.
Road, not nearly as bad, but they're like, who cleans this stretch?
But you know what? Honestly, I will tell you, I'm going to make this a regular
Yeah.
part. One, it's very meditative, picking up trash. Who knew?
Well,
It's very like, you kind of have a nice little flow going on. And then it's a great way to meet your
Yep,
neighbors.
I agree.
met so many people, and they were coming out, and they were all economic classes, colors, stripes, Democrats, Republicans. I had my Carla for Senate T-shirt on because I was like, look, I'm going
Yeah,
to do
get a little
this. I'm going to get a
self-promotion
little, marketing out of this. It's my time,
Yeah.
And just met really cool people, and everyone was like, thank you for doing this. And I was like, join us next
Yeah.
week. Next time is April 28th, so we're skipping Easter, so we're skipping this weekend.
It's on Sundays.
It's on Sundays
Yep.
at 10:30,
Yep.
so I know that doesn't work for everyone. And we'll be doing Kelly and Coolidge is where
Okay.
we'll start. And We Heart West supplies the bags and gloves and everything. So basically, just come and
And
meet
does
your
the city
neighbors.
come pick up the rest? Does this?
No, I think we take it to the
Okay,
dump.
Just curious. Okay. See that? Good things. If there's anything that any of us talked about today that you have a question on, maybe you missed some details or you want more information, you can always email us at ManchTalk@gmail.com. I appreciate that Matt took the time out of his day to come and see us. You can come on anytime you want, talk about whatever you want.
Thank you.
Manchester resident, always like to have more people on. And
Carla's
hey.
my neighbor.
Yeah, Carla and this is neighbors,
True-
and we're
true
all West
story.
Manchester folks, right? What else?
We Heart West.
We Heart West. Find them on Facebook. You can also follow ManchTalk on Facebook at ManchTalk Nothing Cover. Don't tweet at me because I'm not tweeting that. That's all we got. We'll be back next week. I'm not sure what we'll be talking about. If you have any ideas, shows you want to hear, reach out to us. ManchTalk@gmail.com. Until then, we'll see you next week. Bye.